This meeting is now being recorded. Good evening and welcome to the Connecticut Department of Transportation's Public Information Meeting for State Project 0171-0456. This project is to install Centerline rumble strips at eligible locations throughout Connecticut that were repaved in 2020. Tonight we will be presenting on the need for Centerline rumble strips in Bolton on Route 534, Camp Meeting Road, as well as highlighting the safety benefits that come with its installation. My name is Balazs Martai, and I am the project engineer at the Connecticut Department of Transportation for this project. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. We hope our presentation will be informative, and we hope to answer your questions and concerns during tonight's question and answer session. By the end of tonight's meeting, we hope you will have a better understanding of the importance and benefit of installing Centerline rumble strips in Bolton. If you are viewing this presentation in Microsoft Teams, you have the option to view captions or subtitles for this presentation. To turn on this feature, select the CC button at the bottom right corner of your screen to turn on the captioning. Then choose the language by selecting the settings wheel next to the CC button, select Captions/Subtitles, and select the desired language. Available languages are English and Spanish. Before we start the presentation and introduce everyone involved with the presentation, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items and explain the format for tonight's meeting. Our presentation will last approximately 20 to 25 minutes, and once it is completed, we will host a live question and answer session. You will have three ways of communicating with us during the live Q&A. Option 1 is to send us an email to dotproject171-456bolton@ct.gov. Option 2 is to leave a voicemail at 860-944-1111. Option 3 is to type your question directly into the live event Q&A in Microsoft Teams. You can ask a question by clicking on the little question mark, which will bring up your live event Q&A field. Then you select the Ask a Question button at the bottom right corner of the screen, and a field will pop up where you can type your question. Then you hit Enter or the little arrow button to submit your question to the project team. You can also check the box at the bottom of the screen to post your question anonymously if you prefer. There will be a slight delay, but eventually your question will appear in the featured section with all the other questions asked tonight. We also have a project webpage where a recording of tonight's entire presentation, including the live event Q&A, will be stored. The webpage will also contain the same information that I've previously explained on how to provide comments or ask questions. The webpage address is www.portal.ct.gov/dotbolton171-456. The comment period will be open through June 29 via either the email or telephone shown on the screen. The Microsoft Teams chat function will only be available during tonight's live Q&A session. Lastly, we would greatly appreciate it if you can fill out the very brief feedback survey the department has through SurveyMonkey. Virtual public information meetings are a new and necessary development for the department during these times, and the survey will help the department improve these public meetings going forward. The web address is www.surveymonkey.com/r/bmbjs92. There is also a civil rights flyer that's available. The website for this is portal.ct.gov/dot/contract-compliance/civil-rights-and-accessibility. Finally, I would like to reinforce that no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. I would now like to introduce those from the department who are participating in this meeting. Joe Olette is the State Safety Engineer for the state of Connecticut, the head of the Safety Engineering Unit in the department's Division of Traffic Engineering, and is the project manager for this project. Once again, I'm Balazs Martai, an engineer in the Safety Engineering Unit, the lead engineer for this project, and primary presenter for tonight's meeting. I will also be answering any questions you may have during the live Q&A session. Romain Kamara is also an engineer with the Safety Engineering Unit and presenter for tonight's meeting. He will be reading off any questions that come in during the presentation and the live Q&A so I can answer them for you. Ryan Pothering and Devin Howe are also engineers with the Safety Engineering Unit and will be monitoring the Teams chat, project email address, and call and voicemail for any questions or comments during the live Q&A. Tonight, we will go through the project description and purpose of this project, as well as objectives that we hope to achieve. Then we will give a thorough description of what centerline rumble strips actually are and why they should be used on this roadway segment, followed by the types of crashes affected by centerline rumble strips. Next, I will discuss how they are being used in the country and the state and go over the criteria for installation eligibility. Lastly, we will go over the cost and timeline for this project before we wrap everything up with the live Q&A discussion. The Connecticut Department of Transportation repaved Route 534, Camp Meeting Road, from the Manchester Town Line to Route 85 West Street in the town of Bolton during the 2020 construction season. This 1.64-mile long section was identified as being a candidate for the installation of centerline rumble strips. I will go over what qualifies this section of Route 534 as eligible later in the presentation. As mentioned in the last slide, centerline rumble strips are proposed on Route 534, Camp Meeting Road, between the Manchester-Bolton Town Line and Route 85 West Street, as highlighted on the aerial image, for a total of 1.64 miles. As you can see, the residential density is sparse, which is one of the considerations when determining eligibility, but again, I'll go over that more later. For the time being, just please note that the vast majority of homes are more than 100 feet from the roadway, with only a handful of exceptions. I would also like to clarify that centerline rumble strips are discontinued at intersections with public streets, such as at Birch Mountain Road, because vehicles use this intersectional area when they are turning into and out of these side roads. So what are centerline rumble strips? They are grooves within the double yellow centerline that produce noise and vibration when the tires of a vehicle come into contact with them. The noise and vibration alerts the driver that they have departed from their lane and gives the driver an opportunity to recover. Centerline rumble strips are different than the grooves along the edges of Connecticut's interstate highways. The grooves for centerline rumble strips on secondary roads are not as deep and therefore produce much less noise. Why centerline rumble strips? Well, the audible and vibratory warning greatly improves the chance that a driver will quickly and safely return to their lane. Centerline rumble strips also have the additional benefit of helping drivers navigate during poor weather conditions such as fog, snow, rain, or when pavement markings in general are obscured. The Federal Highway Administration has identified centerline rumble strips as a proven safety countermeasure to address head-on and sideswipe opposite direction crashes. They are also considered a proven low-cost safety improvement. As I mentioned in the last slide, centerline rumble strips are an example of a proven safety countermeasure, according to the Federal Highway Administration, along with the other countermeasures shown on this slide. Additional information can be found here by Googling proven safety countermeasures and clicking on the first link. The department's safety engineering unit also has an informational website which provides additional information specific to Connecticut. In 2020, there were 36 fatalities and 2,340 injuries from head-on and opposite direction sideswipe crashes on Connecticut's non-freeway roadways. Centerline rumble strips help reduce these types of crashes, which could be attributed to distracted or fatigued driving. Over 25% of people injured in crashes associated with vehicles crossing the centerline were under the age of 25. It is also worth noting that Connecticut is experiencing a 57% decrease in fatal and severe injury crashes since we have started installing centerline rumble strips. Looking at motor vehicle crashes on this roadway segment from 2018 to 2020, there were 18 reported crashes on Route 534. 4 of these crashes involved a vehicle crossing over the centerline into the opposite lane and then hit a fixed object, resulting in a crash. The point of the centerline rumble strips is to reduce the possibility of these types of severe crashes. It's also important to note that near misses are not recorded, so they may be happening, but there is no information about them. Centerline rumble strips are highly effective, low-cost, proactive treatment intended to reduce lane departure crashes and will aid in continuing to keep these crashes from happening. Based on national data, fatal and injury head-on and sideswipe crashes in rural areas are reduced by an average of 44% when centerline rumble strips are installed. Additionally, per the infograph at the bottom of the slide, centerline rumble strips can reduce head-on crashes by as much as 50%, run-off-the-road crashes by 46%, fatal crashes by 51%, and serious injury crashes by 41%. There are approximately 43 states across the country that use centerline rumble strips, including all of the states in the Northeast U.S. Connecticut started installing centerline rumble strips in 2014 and shoulder line rumble strips on limited access highways back in 1994. As of March of this year, Connecticut has installed over 1,650 miles of centerline rumble strips on state roads and over 230 miles on local roads. As you can see on this map, the majority of towns in Connecticut, over 120 of 169 towns, have had centerline rumble strips installed. Any town shown in green already has centerline rumble strips, whether it's on a town or state-owned roadway. Towns in blue are programmed to have them installed, and towns shown in white do not currently have centerline rumble strips, nor are they planned to get them at this time, but this will likely change in the near future as additional roads are repaved. Also, please note that most of Bolton's neighboring towns, including Manchester, Glastonbury, Hebron, and over in Coventry, already have centerline rumble strips installed. So let's talk about the criteria for centerline rumble strip eligibility. The department goes through a screening process to determine centerline rumble strip eligibility, including taking a look at the traffic volume, making sure that the average daily traffic on the road is at least 2,000 vehicles per day. We also ensure that the pavement is in good condition and is less than 3 years old. The roadway is to have a minimum of 14 feet of width from the center line to the edge of the pavement. This makes sure that there is plenty of room for drivers to maneuver in their lane without going over the centerline rumble strips accidentally. The roadway also has to have a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour or greater. And lastly, there has to be a low residential density. If there are some homes along the segment, we try to ensure that the majority of them are at least 100 feet from the edge of the road. The average cost of installing centerline rumble strips is about $2 per linear foot. On top of that, double yellow centerline paint is added, which is about $1.20 per foot, bringing the cost of implementing the centerline rumble strips to a total of just over $27,500 for the 1.64 mile segment. The cost will be covered by 100% state funds, so there is no cost to the town, with construction anticipated to take place this summer or fall. These are just a couple of pictures taken from construction showing part of the milling and grooving process. Construction vehicles work and travel at approximately 2 to 3 miles per hour to install the centerline rumble strips. The work is done during non-rush hours, and the center lines are painted a few days later. And with that, I want to thank you for your time to listen to our presentation. Now it's time to hear from you in our live question and answer session. Remember, you may email us any questions or comments via the project email address, leave a voicemail message on the call-in phone line, or send your questions directly via Teams chat. We also want to encourage that you take our very brief feedback survey to help us improve how we deliver these virtual public information meetings in the future. So with that being said, Romain, do we have any questions from the email, voicemail, or the chat for us to answer?
Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Balaj. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Romain, and I'll be reading off the questions as they come in this evening. Balaj, it looks like we do have one question that came in from the first selectman, Sandra Piron. The first selectman the question reads, or at least a comment, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Bolton remain opposed to the installations for several reasons. The road is in a hollow with homes located up on the hill on both sides of the length of the project. Several years ago, a similar project on Route 6 caused multiple complaints about the noise in the project, and this project will be no different. The accidents in this area are not lane crossing, but occurs at intersections where the sight lines are very bad or vehicles leaving the travel portion of the roads and going into the woods. Money would be much better served by improving sight lines at these intersections and creating a road diet and adding bike lanes. Bad idea of rumble strips. The height of the home off the road is not considered in your presentation. The length of the road is much less than the neighborhoods that complain from the Route 6 project.
Thank you, Romain, and thank you for Selectwoman Sandra Pirog for that comment. So obviously that's a pretty loaded statement, so I'm going to try and get through it as much as I can. So I know you refer to the Route 6 project that previously occurred. I am a little familiar with that. I mean, that happened a little bit before my time, but I do have some history on it. So that was about a 3/4 mile segment. So you're correct that it was shorter than the segment we're looking at now. My understanding is that at the time that the Centerline rumble strips were installed on that segment of Route 6 that you're referring to, the state representatives wanted it because there were a number of head-on collisions that were happening in the vicinity. And then it was removed again at the request of the state representatives due to the noise. The one thing that we mentioned during the presentation and that I would like to stress is that the rumble strips that we are proposing to install now for the center lines are newer. They're a newer design and shallower, so they make less noise. The ones that were previously installed on Route 6 were the same ones that are used on the interstates today. And as you know, those are quite loud indeed. But these ones are much quieter. So that was one of these. Let's see what else. Oh, the other real important point to drive home is that if the rumble strips are being heard, that means that vehicles are driving over them. So because one of the considerations that we take into account when considering rumble strips is the width of the road. So I believe this section, the cross section in this area, is around 16 feet for each lane. So it's an 11-foot travel lane and approximately a 5-foot shoulder on each side of the center line. That gives plenty of vehicles room to maneuver, even larger vehicles, in order to get around whatever curve or straightaway that there may be without encroaching on the rumble strips themselves. And just to reiterate, if there is a vehicle that is driving over the rumble strip and creating the noise, well, that's exactly why they're there, right? This is supposed to be a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. So we're trying to prevent any crashes from happening in the first place, rather than reacting to ones that are already happened and fixing it once somebody's already hurt. And even if it saves even one life or keeps the crash from happening, this project, since it is relatively speaking on the cheaper side of project, will pay for itself just by preventing one crash or obviously one death, one fatality. But regardless of that, thank you for your question. We take all comments into account, and that's why we're having this meeting. We value all of your input. And this is just the first part of the process, is to get input from people that are local to the area, so that we can compile them. And then once the comment period's over, we will discuss the comments at that time.
Thank you, Balaj, for that very detailed answer. The next question is an email question that came in, and the question reads, are there any environmental impacts for installing these centerline rumble strips at these locations?
Thank you, Romain, for that question. So no, there are no additional environmental impacts that are expected that wouldn't already be in place from the paving, and since the paving already took place, the only thing that's going to be happening is the rumble strips are essentially going to be milled into the pavement. So there isn't anything harmful being done. There's not going to be any kind of extra environmental impact, other than what paving would normally have done anyway. And just to kind of drive that point home a little bit, hopefully, the centerline rumble strips that are cut into the pavement are then hauled from the job site, and they are actually recycled for future use in upcoming pavement projects.
Thank you for your answer, Balaj. As a reminder to everyone that those on YouTube, this information can be found under the video. We just need to click see more, and the email address, which will be there and it's not hyperlinked, can be copied and pasted. For those in the chat, you can also only access the questions via chat. Balaj, it looks like we have one question that came in from Tom Balkses. The question reads, has a study been conducted to determine what the noise level will be at each home after the rumble strips are installed?
Thank you for the question, Romain, and thank you, Tom. So has a study been conducted as far as the noise level goes? Not in terms of decibels or anything like that, as far as I know. Again, these are much quieter than the shoulder rumble strips that you would hear on the highway. They're much narrower. They're spaced a little further apart, and the grooves themselves are also shallower. So really, the idea is to get the attention of the driver and not impact the neighborhood. Keep everything quiet. But again, if you are hearing noise, that's just a sign that somebody's driving over the centerline rumble strips. And if there is a vehicle that is coming head on, and now one of the vehicles is over the centerline, even if it's just a near miss, I mean, that at least tells the driver that, hey, they need to really get back into their lane. Otherwise, a crash could theoretically happen, and the whole point is to try and avoid that. But really, the noise shouldn't be too much of a concern. Again, we did take a look at the residential density in the area. It's not a very dense area. Residentially speaking, the homes are few and far between. And again, most of the homes are at least 100 feet back from the road, save for just a handful of roads. And this 100 feet is based on national best practices. So this is the value that we use and other states use as well. Again, as long as the residences are not closely spaced, which in this segment of Bolton, they're not. But there is continuous research going on by the Federal Highway Administration for different designs of rumble strips in the future. But we're using the latest and greatest that we have at this time.
Thank you for your answer, Balazs. We have another email question that came in. This question reads, will the lanes be closed during the installation of the Centerline rumble strips?
Thank you for that question also. So this is a moving operation. There should be very little interference with traffic. Again, this is going to be happening during non-rush hours. So if people commuting will really not be impacted. And there should be no more than one lane closed while the other is open to maintain traffic flow if it does come down to it. And something else to note is that once the construction crews mobilize, they can complete a segment like this, it's just 1.6 miles in just a few hours. And since the pavement is already put in place during last year's paving project, this will be an even shorter process than if the road was being paved and the centerline rumble strips were being put in. So this is something that can be knocked out in a few hours.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Just a quick reminder to everyone that your feedback is greatly appreciated, and we would appreciate if you can fill out the SurveyMonkey survey after the presentation. Then the audience on YouTube should also have a link to this survey. Balazs, it looks like we have another question that came in, and it is also an email question. This question reads, how long will the project take and when will the work be scheduled?
Thank you, Romain. So I kind of touched on it in my previous answer, but the project will only take a few hours. The crews move quickly. This is a short section, and once they're mobilized, I mean, they can knock it out in a few hours. The work is set to be scheduled for either the summer of the fall of this year. But before anything gets done, a press release will be issued prior to any work being started. So the public will, be made aware.
Thank you for that answer, Balazs. Balazs, we have another question that came in, and the question reads, will reflectors be installed in the grooves as part of this project?
Thank you, Romain. So no, reflectors are not being installed as the centerline rumble strips are installed. And there's a few reasons for this. Mostly, there's a tendency for them to get ripped up when the plows go over them in the winter. So that means that not only do they have to be more closely maintained, but they can also possibly pose an additional safety hazard, an undesired safety hazard, because the reflectors would serve as debris that gets left behind, which can actually hit the vehicles. So no reflectors are proposed in conjunction with the centerline rumble strips.
Thank you for that answer, Balazs. And I just want to remind everyone that the comment period for this presentation is open through to June 29th, and we will be reviewing all voicemails and the email that comes in within that time frame. However, the live chat is only available tonight. Balazs, it looks like we have another question. This question reads, how much money will this project cost the state and to the town?
Thank you, Romain, for that question. So it was briefly discussed during the presentation itself, which again will be available for viewing, at a later date. But the approximate cost of installing these for this 1.6 mile segment is just around $27,000, and the state covers the entire cost of the work. We receive funding every year to repave roads that have made it onto what we call the vendor in place list. And this is actually why we're looking at putting in the Centerline rumble strips now, because the pavement is new, and one of the qualifications is that the pavement has to be either new or in good condition or less than 3 years old. So, it makes sense to do the work in conjunction. And so since the rumble strips are considered at the time that these vendor in place lists come out, they are actually funded under the same umbrella. So there is no cost to the town for any of the work that's being proposed.
Thank you for your answer, Balazs. One more reminder that everyone can please visit the website and you can find a copy of the presentation along with a copy of the plans and general information about this project.
Hey guys, this is Ryan Pothering speaking. So I'm taking a look at all the email questions right now, and so far we have gone through all the ones that have come in during the presentation.
Looks like we may have one more question from Tom, Ryan, and Romain.
Yep, I see it right there, Tom. I'm gonna publish that right now.
Yes, Balazs, the question that's from Tom reads, were the sight lines reviewed along the length, specifically from Route 85 to the Birch Mountain Road intersection in both directions?
Thank you for the question, Romain, and thank you, Tom, again. So really the main purpose of this project and this meeting tonight is to discuss the Centerline rumble strips. Having said that, if you are referring to, and I just, hopefully I'm reading this right. If you're referring to the sight lines that are coming from the actual side road, so, Birch Mountain Road itself looking out onto Route 534, or, French Road and Fiora Road looking out onto 534, any sight lines that are coming out of side streets are actually the responsibility of the municipality to ensure that there is proper sight line. So again, if you're looking from Birch Mountain Road and you're trying to enter Route 534 and you're noticing that maybe there's too much vegetation or whatever the case may be, it is actually the responsibility of the municipality to make sure that the sight lines are cleared of any obstructions, including vegetation or anything like that. So I guess, no, we did not look at it as it was kind of outside of the project purview, but that's just, general information, I guess.
Thank you for your answer, Balazs. Last call for any additional questions during this live Q&A. And while we wait on those, I just want to remind everyone that the comment period for this presentation is open through to June 29th, and during that time frame, we'll be reviewing all voicemails and emails. And for the folks on YouTube, I want to send a reminder to everyone there too that all this information can be found under the video, and you would just need to click see more. The email address, which is not hyperlinked, should be there for you to copy and paste. It looks like we don't have any questions coming in. Please remember, just another reminder that everyone, please take the brief survey after the presentation. We will greatly appreciate your feedback, as it will help us for further future presentations. And I want to thank everyone here for joining us. Actually, I think we have one question that just came in. The question is actually from the first select woman. How would Demi get permission to do those sightline improve? How do we get permission? I guess she was trying to say, how do we get permission to do those sightline improvements? We've been told that we can't do anything.
Thank you for that question, First Select Woman. So I'm not entirely sure who it is that mentioned that the municipality can't do anything. I believe it's in the traffic guidelines that It is the responsibility, and it may even be in the state statutes, so please don't quote me on that. But I do believe that it is the responsibility of the municipality. Again, this is just when we're talking about intersections with town roads. So if there's a state road, but the intersecting road is a town road, it is the responsibility of the town or the municipality to clear any obstructions, to make sure that the sightlines are appropriate. I guess if you have further questions about that, if you want to send me an email specifically, based on the email that is provided here on the page, I can, provide you some additional information and resources on maybe some of the literature that states this or whatnot, if that's something that you're interested in.
Thank you for that answer, Balaj. And she did clarify. She said that question should be, how do I? So I guess, as you mentioned, she can reach out to you directly and you would be able to provide her with any further information about sightlines. Yes,
correct. Definitely.
It looks like we have a question that came in from Shelby Marquise, or maybe a comment. It says, rumble strips seems to be a much more cost-effective approach to preventing crashes on Camp Meeting Road rather than blasting rock away the roadway to improve sightlines.
Thank you for that comment, Shelby. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I'm certainly in agreement. Rumble strips are, again, just to keep on repeating it, they're a proven low-cost safety countermeasure. They're easy to install. And because they're so cheap, in the grand scheme of things, it really is something that even if it saves one life or prevents one crash from happening, it pretty much automatically pays for itself. And like I said, we do take a pretty thorough look at the qualifiers of a roadway before we even suggest putting in Centerline rumble strips. But every year when we do have these paving projects, we check to see any of the roadways that are eligible. And a lot of the time it seems to be that noise seems to be the major issue that comes up. And as I mentioned before, that's really just a sign that people are driving over the center line, which they really shouldn't be. But at the same time, these types of rumble strips are not the ones that were previously installed in Route 6. I know those were louder. That was a different design. They have since been revamped. They're a lot quieter. And again, they're meant mostly to get the driver's attention, which should really only last 1 or 2 seconds, anyway, because once they feel the rumble strips and hear the rumble strips, they should be performing a corrective action. So really, we're not anticipating the noise to be too much of an issue, unless, there are other things going on out here that maybe we're not aware of, such as speeding, and maybe that makes it more difficult for people to stay in the lane. But, I can't speak to that specifically. But in short, yes, Shelby, thank you. I do agree that they're cost effective.
Yes. Thank you for your answer to Shelby's comment. Well, it looks like we can just wrap this presentation up now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I just want to remind everyone before we get out of here that the comment period for this presentation is open through to June 29th, 2021. Questions can be sent to via the email listed on the screen, DOT project 171-456 bolton@ct.gov, or by phone number at 860-944-1111. Please also visit our website, portal.ct.gov/DOT Bolton 171-456, where you can find a copy of the presentation plan and the link to the brief survey that I strongly encourage everyone to participate in. Your feedback would be greatly appreciated. Thank you once again for joining us this evening, and you have a wonderful evening.
And thank you, everybody, for your questions. And have a good night.